Hemiatrophic lateral sclerosis. You probably know it better as ALS. It comes from the Greek language and means no muscle nourishment. And that's exactly what happens when someone has ALS, a neurodegenerative disease that impacts nerve cells. The brain can no longer communicate with muscles. That leads to extreme weakness and disability. There's no cure for ALS. Doctors can only manage symptoms for their patients. But for a very small group of patients, there has been some improvement. And that's practically unheard of in ALS. So what is it about these patients that made them get a little bit better? And most importantly, what can we learn from them?
It was a craze that swept the globe. Fill a bucket with ice, dump it over your head, and film it for all to see on social media. Some may be better than others. It was the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. The goal? To raise money for research on ALS, a devastating, debilitating disease with no cure. April McDuff did the Ice Bucket Challenge next to her husband, Mike. 1, 2, 3. For them, it was personal.
You move it towards you a little bit more.
Mike was diagnosed with ALS back in October 2012.
About 2010, I started to get symptoms. What happened was my arms started to get weak. I was starting to lose muscle tone on my shoulders and my arms. And I went to my doctor, and that time I had rheumatoid arthritis, so I was going into Boston for the rheumatoid arthritis. And when I went in that day, I says, you know, doc, I says, something's not right. And he looked at me and goes, what is going on?
ALS is a neurodegenerative disease that disrupts the connection between the brain and the muscles. It leads to weakness in the arms and legs, and often the mouth, causing issues with speech and swallowing. Dr. Richard Bedlack runs the ALS clinic at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. He has devoted his life to this disease, one that has remained a mystery to doctors and scientists for decades.
And it was actually during my neurology residency that I saw my first patient with ALS. And of all the things I had seen up until that point, I thought it was the most amazing and most terrible of all the diseases. It's literally like an explosion went off in a nervous system. Plus, there was so little known about it back then in the late 90s. And most amazing of all, Duke really didn't have much to offer for it.
Dr. Bedlack opened this multidisciplinary clinic in 2001. His goal is to give patients more options, even put a smile on their faces despite the circumstances. That's where the fun outfits come in.
And so the clothes can be a great icebreaker. You know, the first thing we can do is laugh about, you know, a purple jacket with butterflies on it that I have on that day. And it often is the first thing that people want to know is, what has he got on today? You know, can I get a selfie with him for Facebook? You know, that kind of stuff. So it works.
Though more is known about ALS today than when Dr. Bedlack first started, the fact remains that no one has ever beaten the disease. But he thinks maybe there's a chance to at least get better.
My life is a lot like the life of Fox Mulder was on the X-Files. You know, people are constantly sending me weird stuff, like they hear about on the internet. Somebody in a chat room said his wife got exposed to something and suddenly she could walk again and she hadn't walked for 10 years. Or somebody saw a news clip in the case of Mike McDuff.
Everything's set.
Mike McDuff, the guy in the Ice Bucket Challenge video, saw his health declining. He could barely speak. He couldn't swallow, eating through a feeding tube. He called his adult children back home to say goodbye. He and his wife even picked out a plot at the local cemetery. And then one of his friends mentioned a nutritional supplement called Lunasin.
And she told me about it. And I had nothing else to lose, you know, and she's been a good friend, you know. And so I said, I'll try it. It took time, and I was very patient, you know. But one thing I noticed, when my wife was giving me the shakes, I noticed in the first month I couldn't put my finger on it. I felt a little better. I felt a little more energy. End of December, we had a company over. My wife was making a nice pot roast dinner. And I says, you know, hon, says, can you just give me a little bit of mashed potatoes and gravy? I'll see what I can do. And she says, you sure? I says, yeah, I want to see what I can do. So I was able to get it down. I started to cry because I know something was working.
Mike's case is exactly the kind of rare exception to the usual rules of ALS that Dr. Bedlak is looking for. He scours the internet and connects with doctors around the world. Once he finds a so-called ALS reversal, he verifies it by pulling medical records and speaking with the patient's doctors. If he's convinced the person has ALS and not a disease with symptoms that mimic it, he gets to work trying to crack the case.
I'm up to a total of 24 confirmed ALS reversals now. People that I really have the records, I really believe they had ALS, and I really believe they're dramatically better.
Those 24 cases vary in the treatments used. Mike McDuff is one of them. Dr. Bedlak started a pilot trial based on the exact regimen Mike followed, enrolling 50 patients.
Can you lift the knee at all?
I have tried that.
One of them is 58-year-old Matthew Teasdale. He's been on Lunasin for 6 months, halfway through the trial. It's too early to know for sure the long-term impact here, but Matt has already seen improvements.
All right, let's see your calves jump up, Matt. Can you lift your knee? Okay, wow.
In this video, you can see Matt moving his legs. A shocking development.
The legs died, I say, in January, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, where I could stare at my legs and nothing would happen. Well, I started to be able to push with 2 feet, and one hadn't moved in 6 months. So I said, we're on to something here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting. I think it's still too early to tell what it means yet. As we've talked about before, sometimes people with ALS do just spontaneously get a little better for a short period of time.
Right.
But hopefully this is the start of something much bigger.
For patients like Matt Teasdale and Mike McDuff, it's all about quality of life. Mike knows it isn't a cure for ALS, that Lunasin won't work for everyone, but maybe there's something we can learn from his case that could help even one more person. He's experienced the worst of ALS, so no one knows better than him just how important that could be.
I'm here. I'm alive. I got a better quality of life. My heart goes off to these poor ALS patients, people that can't do nothing. They can't talk. They can't swallow. They're so weak. I know there's a cure out there, but we have to be very patient. Like I've been very patient. I was one of the fortunate ones that it really helped me. And I hope I can help other people too.
Disease reversals, while rare, can occur under the right circumstances. For one family in the UK, that meant saving their father from diabetes and an amputation.